On one of the islands in Japan, in an isolated prison, the prisoners were competing in boxing matches, and the upcoming competition was between a giant guy and our hero, Andy, who had heterochromatic eyes. All the prisoners tried betting on the match, most of them betting on the big guy. And indeed, at first, he was able to beat Andy easily, but suddenly, Andy managed to block his punch and knock him to the ground, winning the match effortlessly. As Andy looked up, he saw a plane in the sky heading towards the island. All the prisoners rushed out to see who was on the plane, and suddenly, a man was brought out, standing in front of the leader. The leader said, "Welcome to Esper prison. I am the prison warden." But before he could continue, the man interrupted, "Shut up, I'm not interested in who you are." The warden replied, "You must be Hayabu Kyusuk, accused of being part of the criminal organization known as Pandra." Hayabu answered, "Yes, that's me." Then one of the guards punched him in the face and said, "Speak respectfully to the leader. You won't be able to use your powers here." Hayabu responded, "Wanna test that?" Suddenly, all the soldiers raised their weapons, and Andy told them, "You don't have to listen to him, he's just a kid." Hayabu smiled at him, approached him, and asked for his name. Andy replied, "Andy Hinomaya." As Hayabu was about to respond, a guard interrupted, "You're prisoners here, you can't move freely." Hayabu shot back, "You better mind your business," and used his power to lift the plane, letting it crash down. He said, "You've placed anti-Esper measures on this island, quite professional." The soldiers then grabbed both Hayabu and Andy, taking them to solitary confinement. Andy sat in the room next to Hayabu, thinking to himself, "What did I do to end up here?" Hayabu asked, "Why did you try to stop the soldiers?" Andy replied, "I hate Esper, but I hate those who belittle them even more, and I wanted to protect you." Hayabu asked, "Are you an Esper?" Andy responded, "Supposedly, I'm partly Esper and partly human. But now I'm in this place, which is the Esper graveyard. You can't escape once you're in." Hayabu then asked, "But I heard someone managed to escape." Andy replied, "Yeah, someone was injured and taken to the island's hospital. That's the only chance to escape. By the way, why are you wearing a school uniform? Are you really part of a dangerous organization as they say?" Hayabu surprisedly replied, I'm the leader." Andy laughed and said, "This sounds fun. I might join you if we get out of here." Hayabu said, "Remember my name well, and don't forget what you said. As soon as we escape, you'll join us directly." Andy replied, "Don't worry, I won't break my promise. But escaping this island is impossible." Hayabu answered, "I'll leave here once I finish the job I came for." At the same time, the warden was upset that Hayabu managed to use his powers despite the anti-Esper measures. He ordered a soldier to try to kill him. During lunch, Andy and Hayabu stood in line to get their food. Andy got his meal, and when it was Hayabu's turn, the cook turned around and added poison to the food. Hayabu said, "This meal was made just for me. Thank you." He then sat down with Andy at the table and gave him the poisoned soup, saying, "This is my thanks for what you did with the soldiers yesterday." Andy was thrilled with the dish. After lunch, it was time for the prisoner competitions again, and this time everyone was betting on Andy. Hayabu also went to watch. The match began, but Andy couldn't move and was beaten easily, collapsing from the pain. Hayabu approached him and said, "Forgive me, the food I gave you was poisoned. You'll leave this prison as you wanted, but make sure to keep your promise to join me." The prison guards then took Andy to the hospital. Andy woke up in the hospital and found Hayabu standing before him, saying, "I gave you the antidote, but don't move too much until you recover." Andy looked around and saw all the staff lying unconscious. He watched Hayabu as he began to leave. Andy asked, "Where are you going?" Hayabu replied, "I told you before, I have a job to finish before escaping." Andy got up and ran after him. They walked through the corridor, and Andy remarked, "This place isn't a hospital at all, it's more like a lab." Suddenly, they heard a guard approaching. Andy quickly hid, then attacked the guard and took his weapon. The two of them continued until they reached the main room. Hayabu took the weapon from Andy and started shooting at everything in the room. He approached the glass cube in the center and found a little girl inside. As soon as she saw him, she said, "I've been waiting for you, leader." Hayabu replied, "Don't worry, I'll deal with these people and save you immediately." He turned to see the warden, who said, "Now I understand everything. The girl in the cube is part of your team. You allowed the soldiers to capture you so you could save her. But now, neither of you will escape." Suddenly, a huge monster appeared. The warden said, "This is one of the Esper. I used his mind and power and fused them into this monster." Hayabu tried to use his powers on the monster, but it blocked them easily and attacked him quickly, trying to kill him. They began fighting. Andy quickly grabbed the weapon, climbed the stairs, and started shooting at the monster to help Hayabu. But suddenly, the monster used its power on Andy. Andy blocked the attacks effortlessly, making Hayabu surprised from what he saw. Hayabu turned to the warden and said, "You're responsible for what's about to happen." He twisted the emblem on his neck, unleashing unlimited power in his body. He began moving toward the monster, blocking all its attacks, and then used his powers to destroy the monster and the entire place. He grabbed the little girl and Andy and escaped using his powers. Afterward, he twisted the emblem again, and all his power disappeared. Hayabu stood in an area, knocked on the air, and a massive hidden ship suddenly appeared. His followers were all standing aboard. A man named Magi came down and stood before Hayabu, saying, "Welcome back, leader." Hayabu looked at the prisoners who were watching everything that happened. They all managed to escape the prison walls. Hayabu said, "We are members of the Pandra organization. We've destroyed the military regime of the state, and now, all of you are free to do whatever you want." Andy watched as Hayabu approached him, saying, "I know what your power is. Get on the ship now. A man never breaks his promise." Hayabu extended his hand to shake Andy's, saying, "You're very strong. You'll have to help me with all the upcoming missions." They began sailing, and Magi stood with Hayabu alone, asking, "Are you sure about what you did? Allowing someone like Andy on board the catastrophe ship? He could pose a huge threat to us." Meanwhile, in the lower deck of the ship, Andy was sitting alone. Suddenly, he used the power in his eye to open a direct connection with someone else, saying, "Inspector, I've successfully infiltrated the Pandra organization's ship as planned." Days passed aboard the ship, and Andy gradually blended in. One day, Hayabu came to introduce him to the crew, saying, "This is Andy, a new member of ours." He ordered Hamster, one of the crew members, to attack him with his powers, but Andy easily blocked it. Magi said, "Andy's power is that he can nullify any ability coming from another Esper." Then Hayabu told Yujiri, the little girl, try to read his mind. She tried, but it was no use. Hayabu told them, "This is Andy's power, and it will be very useful for us." Andy and Magi then started walking through the ship and saw many children playing in the corridors. Andy asked, "Why are there so many kids on a ship like this?" Magi replied, "Because they are Espers. Their parents abandoned them as soon as they found out, and it's Pandra's duty to take care of them. Now you're free to do whatever you want. When we need you, we'll call for you." Magi left, and Andy stood there thinking, "So I'm stuck on this ship for good." Suddenly, a voice whispered in his ear, "Yes." Andy turned and saw someone standing far away. His name was Fugiru, and his skill was voice manipulation. Fugiru made Andy clean the ship all day. At the end of the day, Andy went down to the ship's lower deck, as usual, and reported everything to his commander. Meanwhile, Magi sat with Hayabu and said, "I've been trying to gather information about Andy, but there's not enough on him. I can't trust him because our powers don't work on him, so we can't verify his identity using Yujiri's ability." Hayabu replied, "It's fine. We'll take him with us on the next mission. It'll be a real test for him." The next day, they all took a small boat and headed into the city, bringing Andy along. They arrived at a place with a lot of goods, and Andy began inspecting them, saying, "Everything here is labeled with Pandra's logo. Isn't that risky for you?" Momiji, a member of the crew, replied, "We are well loved by the people." Andy turned and saw Magi holding crates of weapons, as well as a famous painting stolen from a nearby museum. Hayabu asked Andy, "What do you think of the stuff we have? We're going to trade all of it today." They boarded the ship again and continued moving through the city with the goods. Suddenly, Magi used his powers to fly into the air and killed an official who was reporting them to the police. By the end of the day, the whole team gathered at a cafe in the city and noticed that Magi was very late. They decided to go look for him, with Andy joining them. Andy witnessed the team killing everyone in their path and looked around, noticing that the ordinary people didn't see anything. He thought to himself, "It must be because of Fugiru's sound manipulation." Andy stood there, shocked by everything happening around him. At the same time, Hayabu and Yujiri were walking together in the city, as Hayabu received information about the person he would be delivering the goods to that day. Later, Hayabu went to meet the person in charge, who greeted him, saying, "Welcome. It's been a long time since we last met." Meanwhile, Andy stood on the roof of a building, holding a sniper rifle, aiming at the other man, waiting for Hayabu's signal to shoot. Andy thought to himself, "I need to shoot now because I'm sure Hayabu and the team are suspicious of me. I have to fire to earn their trust." Andy looked around and saw Fugiru and Momiji standing nearby, with everything set for the plan. They were all waiting for Hayabu's signal to start. The man in front of Hayabu was an old friend and an Esper. He said, "It's been a long time since we last met, over half a century, yet you haven't aged a day. The first time I met you was in 1942. Hayabu responded, "Yes, back then, I was an officer, and you were my superior." Andy started recalling his research and realized that Hayabu had been using his powers to manipulate genes and maintain his youthful appearance. He had once been a member of the Japanese army during the war with America. Andy became even more nervous and almost dropped his sniper. Suddenly, Hayabu gave the signal, and Fugiru said to Andy, "Shoot now." Andy tried to steady himself, but his hands were shaking. All of a sudden, the people in the room shot at Hayabu, but they all fell to the ground. Andy was stunned by what he saw and turned to find Hayabu and Magi standing there. Hayabu said, "You really couldn't shoot, could you?" He approached Andy and handed him a necklace like the one he was wearing, with the symbol of the organization. Using his power, Hayabu transported them to the meeting hall, and Magi used his ability to decapitate the other man, revealing that he was filled with wires. Hayabu walked toward the window, saying, "The real body is in that building over there. But do you know why I stayed at the same rank as you during our time in the army? Because I died before. The bullet in my head earned me a special promotion, and this uniform is for our fallen comrades. I know you can hear me now. We were old friends, but I must kill you now." Suddenly, the other man used his powers to strike the building they were in, but Hayabu effortlessly blocked the energy. He twisted his necklace, unleashing his immense power, and directed it toward the building, killing the man and destroying the place. Hayabu then turned the necklace again, returning to his normal form, and walked out of the scene. The next day, news of the explosion spread across all media, with reports attributing it to Esper powers. Queen Sophie of Britain appeared on television and announced that she would cover all the damages caused by the Espers. She also invited all nations to attend a summit in her country to discuss how Espers could coexist with ordinary humans. Meanwhile, Andy and the others returned to the ship, where they all started celebrating. Andy stood there, puzzled, thinking, how can these people, who were killing others just yesterday, now be celebrating and happy? He looked ahead and saw Hayabu standing there, saying, "I'm very pleased you've joined us. In Pandra, we are more than just a criminal organization, we're a family." And the days passed, and the time for Princess Sophie's party came. 2 representatives from Japan went to attend the event. As soon as they entered, Sakaki thought to himself, "This place is attended by all the countries and Esper organizations, but in reality, everyone here is investigating each other, trying to gather more information. The world is very harsh because they believe the Espers will be a winning diplomatic solution." The other person, named Minamoto, responded, "And that's why Princess Sophie is trying to prevent that." Suddenly, as they were standing, they saw Hayabu with members of his organization. They immediately approached him, and Hayabu greeted them, saying, "Welcome, aren't you members of the Babel organization in Japan?" Minamoto replied, "What brings you here?" Hayabu responded, "We invited ourselves because we want to gather information about everyone here, as they could be our future enemies. We've finished our work here and can leave easily." Hayabu gave a signal, causing the electricity to be cut off, and they all suddenly escaped. When the power returned, there was a message on the wall that said, "The Pandra organization was here." At the same time, Sakaki and Minamoto went to the room of Princess Sophie's deputy and showed him their identification cards. Minamoto said, "I am from the Babel organization. We saw Pandra at the party, and they even left their mark there. We want to know if anything happened because of their presence." The deputy replied, "And why would we tell you our country's secrets?" Minamoto responded, "We've faced Pandra many times, and besides, Hayabu was once a member of our military institution. We can help you." Suddenly, while they were talking, one of the guards entered the room and showed the deputy a video that had spread in the media about the message Pandra left at the castle, which said, "We have kidnapped Princess Sophie, and we guarantee her safety. We will contact you later to inform you of our demands." Minamoto said, "Now I understand everything that happened." Sakaki reassured him, saying, "Don't worry, we will be able to save the princess." He took out a USB drive, saying, "I got this from Hayabu when I met him in the hall." They went to check its contents, and at the same time, Hayabu was watching them, thinking, "This is exactly what I wanted. The plan is going well." Hayabu then went to meet the other members, and the princess was with them. As soon as she woke up, Magi said to her, "We are the Pandra organization, and you are now in our room, but don't worry, we won't harm you." The princess asked, "So why did you kidnap me?" Hayabu replied, "You don't need to know that, but what's important is that the person who requested your kidnapping is this little girl, Yujiri." The princess said, "I feel like you aren't as evil as people say. What do you think about working with me in my country? I can't support all your actions, but I can offer you protection, and my country will always welcome any Esper." Hayabu recalled an old memory, turned his face away, and left the room, and everyone followed, leaving the princess alone. At the same time, Sakaki told Minamoto, there was a game and other files on the USB. The files indicated that an organization was planning to assassinate the princess, so it seems Hayabu kidnapped her to protect her. But if we finish the game here, we might find more things that could help us. And indeed, they started trying to complete the game. Meanwhile, Princess Sophie was sitting alone in the room when Yujiri entered, offering her tea. Before leaving, the princess said, I feel lonely here. How about you sit and talk with me for a while? Yujiri was very happy when she heard that and sat next to her, and the two of them started talking. In another room, Andy was sitting on the ground training while Hayabu was reading a book. Andy asked, "Did Yujiri really request to kidnap the princess?" Hayabu replied, "Yes. She was able to predict an assassination attempt on the princess and wanted to save her." Andy then asked, "So why did you listen to her?" Hayabu responded, "This was Yujiri's first request of me, so of course, I would fulfill it for her. After all, we are a family in this organization." Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and Princess Sophie and Yujiri entered the room. Sophie said, "I have a request. Yujiri has never gone out in the city for fun, so I want to show her around. Can we go out and enjoy ourselves for a bit?" Hayabu stood up, walked over to Yujiri, and asked, "Do you really want to do this?" She replied, "Yes." He said, "Then go ahead. I'll use my power to distract everyone, so no one will be able to recognize you among the crowd." Suddenly, all the girls in the city turned into the same appearance as Princess Sophie. Because of what happened, Fujura was able to identify the organization that wanted to assassinate the princess, and Hayabu managed to kill them all. He called Andy and said, "I hope you're accompanying the princess and Yujiri because you're the only one my power doesn't work on, so you can tell who the real princess is. I've killed all the people here, extracted information from their minds, and it turns out they are not Espers but just an ordinary organization. They received orders to kill the princess over the internet, and none of them know who the mastermind behind this operation is. But now, other people are trying to find this information." Meanwhile, Sakaki managed to finish the game on the USB, and they went to analyze the data that appeared. It turned out to be reports from the British government. Before they could read the details, Princess Sophie's deputy stopped them, saying, "This is classified information belonging to our country. I will not allow you to see it." Minamoto tried to analyze the things he had seen, and he noticed that the deputy's assistant had disappeared. He said, "Now I know who wanted to assassinate the princess." At the end of the day, the princess and Yujiri visited all the places, and then they went to visit an abandoned orphanage. There, Sophie said to Yujiri, "I was sure my feeling was right. I supported this orphanage before, and a girl with Esper powers appeared and suddenly disappeared. That girl was you." The princess remembered what happened back then and said, "I'm very happy to see you again. From the day you disappeared, I was very worried about you." She then said, "I hope you come live in my country again. I won't let you feel lonely ever again." Suddenly, while they were standing, the deputy's assistant entered, and everyone started running after him. Minamoto stood and said to the princess, "Be careful, this is the person who wants to assassinate you." Suddenly, the assistant pulled out a gun, aimed it at the princess, and fired a shot in her direction, but Andy quickly jumped and saved her. The assistant stood and said to the princess, "All of this is your fault. You used the state's budget to establish a fund for the protection of Esper rights. In the end, they are monsters with no rights. Spending money on Espers is wasteful. We should use the funds for something more useful. Anyway, it's too late now, and it's time for you to die here." Suddenly, Yujiri used her power, and a large aura appeared around her, but she saw Hayabu behind her, saying, "Don't worry, I'll protect you." He used his power to throw away the assistant's gun, and the forces managed to arrest him. The princess approached Hayabu and said, "I feel reassured knowing that Yujiri is with you. You treat her very well." "Thank you." Hayabu replied, "I promise I'll protect her." He then turned to Minamoto and said, "Sorry, I used you to find out who was trying to assassinate the princess. We've completed all our tasks here." He then used his power, and they all left. They all boarded the ship and decided to head to Japan. On the way, Magi asked Hayabu, "What makes you want to go back there again? Is it because you saw Minamoto, or do you want to see the queen?" Hayabu replied, "I'm sure the girls there are all alone. I want to check on them and make sure the Queen of Esper is doing okay." In the ship's basement, Andy was, as usual, reporting everything that had happened to his commander, saying, "I still haven't been able to reach the ship's central section because they don't fully trust me yet. But I have a plan that might work." The commander told him, "You must always remember, your mission is to retrieve the device installed on the ship, and you were chosen for this task exceptionally, so failure is not an option. I'll be waiting for the details soon." At the same time, on Japan's maritime borders, the Babel organization learned that Pandra would arrive there soon, so they prepared their defenses and stood ready. Suddenly, an order was issued for 3 girls from Babel to attack the ship, and indeed, they began destroying everyone on board. Everyone ran to try and control the damage. Before Andy could join them, Yujiri handed him her hamster and said, "This will help you since you're still weak." Andy ran to catch up with them, and the crew on the ship started dying one by one. Babel took control of the ship's system and issued orders for everyone to surrender. Hayabu told Magi, "I'll leave the conversation to you, and then he teleported to face one of the three girls, saying, "Greetings, my queen." He tried to attack her, but she blocked his strike, and they began to fight. Meanwhile, Andy was on the ship, and one of the girls was about to attack him, but he activated his emblem, used his power, and managed to block her attack. As he tried to figure out who she was, another girl appeared, helping her, and managed to tie Andy up. She tried to use her power to discover who he was, but she was shocked when her ability didn't work on him. Andy looked at her hand and saw the Babel emblem, saying, "Now I understand. You're Espers of the Japanese forces. You've clearly been fully trained to be this strong." The girl responded, "It doesn't matter who we are." She then took the small figure of Hayabu from the hamster and said, "This is the key to entering Pandra's ship's command room. Now, we can control it." Andy thought, "They're trying to breach the ship's security. I need to go with them to reach the main room." He then said to them, "Before you go, take me with you. I'll be dead soon because of Hayabu's fight upstairs." The girl agreed, "We can use his power as a shield to protect us from the rest of the organization," and they decided to take him along. The two girls attacked the rest of the organization members, using Andy as a shield, and managed to breach the ship's system, taking control. At that moment, Andy managed to escape from them and reach the ship's main room, saying, "I finally made it here." But suddenly, Hayabu appeared behind him, saying, "What are you doing here? Come on, everyone is waiting for you upstairs." Above, the ship was under Babel's control, and Magi tried to breach the ship's defenses but to no avail. Hayabu said, "Since it's come to this, I'll head up and attack them, and you cover my back." Before he could use his power to teleport, Andy ran and grabbed his hand, and they teleported together. Hayabu asked him, "Are you really that worried about me? Well, come with me. You might be useful." They breached Babel's main ship, freeing the captured members. Suddenly, the three girls appeared before them again. Hayabu told Andy, "I'll take care of them. You go and take control of the ship." Andy quickly ran out of the room but found Babel's commander standing in front of him, saying, "I've heard you're a new member with them. Anyway, I have the ship's control device. Come and take it if you want." Andy ran towards her and tried to hit her, but she dodged and easily knocked him down. She used her power to throw him into the sea. However, Andy got up again, grabbed her hand, deactivated her power, hit her, and broke the device in her hand, restoring control of Pandra's ship. Suddenly, Andy heard Minamoto's voice behind him, holding a gun and ordering him to surrender. Andy raised his hands but kicked a piece of the device, and then tried to hit Minamoto, managing to escape afterward. Hayabu caught him and flew him away, saying, "Don't worry, I managed to save you." They returned to the ship to escape from there. Hayabu looked out of the window and saw another trap laid for them ahead, with the three girls standing in front of them again. They used their power to pull the ship towards them. Hayabu said, "I'll activate the queen, and you try to resist their power." Andy asked, "Who is this queen?" Magi replied, "She's the original owner of the ship. We, the Pandra organization, are not just a criminal group. We fight to free oppressed Espers and create a new world. The next leader of the Espers will be this queen." And Hayabu was able to know this through his power to foresee the future. That's why he's trying to protect her and doesn't want to kill her. Hayabu stood in front of the ship, saying, "The queen, Kaoru, this will be her throne. But right now, she's still young and under Babel's control." He turned his emblem and unleashed his full power, managing to block the queen's force against the ship. He then turned the emblem again, deactivating his power, and restored control of the ship. They were able to fly it away, and Hayabu used his power to teleport the ship from there. He took the ship and headed to the city to try to fix the damage there, and the whole team went for a walk around the city to buy what they needed, with Andy carrying everything on his back. While they were standing, Yujiri ran off to a shop to buy some things, so Magi told Andy to go after her. Andy ran and tried to catch up with her. Yujiri walked alone and stopped in front of a shop selling charms, which were two metal pieces between two friends. She wanted to buy it and found Andy beside her. She bought the charm and was very happy. While they were walking around the city, Yujiri saw an amusement park and stopped to watch it. As soon as Andy saw her, he said, "Come on, let's go inside for a bit," and went to buy tickets. While he was buying the tickets, someone was standing and watching him. At the same time, Hayabu disguised himself as a doctor and entered a hospital, as he wanted to examine his body. In the amusement park, Andy and Yujiri wanted to go in, but he noticed a sign that said, "No Espers allowed," so he held her hand, used his ability, and managed to get through the gate. They started riding all the rides together. Afterward, they sat down to watch a circus show. While they were sitting, Andy told Yujiri, "Stay here, I'll go get us something to drink," and he got up and started walking toward the bathroom. Suddenly, he turned around and stood in front of the person who had been following him, saying, "You've been following me quietly since this morning. What do you want from me, Mr. Minamoto?" Minamoto said, I came here to talk to you as a detective from the United States. Andy replied, how am I a detective? Minamoto responded, during our fight, you were using a technique from the US Army. Andy said, that's weak proof, but then the head of the Babel organization told him, your arrival here is more than enough proof. My name is Fujiko, the director of the Babel organization against Espers. Minamoto added, don't worry about the girl with you. One of us is watching her now. Andy asked, so what's your goal? Minamoto replied, we want to eliminate the Pandra organization once and for all, and we want you to help us from the inside. Andy said, you know, if I tell Hayabu this information, they will trust me more, which would be better for me. Fujiko said, at that point, we'll also give them information that there's an American spy among them, and just the suspicion alone will greatly reduce their trust in you. Andy replied, you know a lot about Pandra. What's the connection between you two? Minamoto said, during the last World War, every country invested its power in Espers, and just before the war ended, Hayabu, a special Japanese forces member, was betrayed by his superior. In revenge, he killed every party involved, one by one. Not only that, Hayabu also killed the founding members of the Babel organization, whose goal was to protect the Espers. At the time, he claimed that he didn't trust any ordinary people and had no connection with them. Andy said, I can't believe that story so easily. Fujiko responded, it doesn't matter. What matters is that it's the truth. And from that time, we've known Hayabu. Minamoto asked, what do you think about helping us? Anyway, I don't want your answer now. I'll give you time to think. It would also be in Hayabu's best interest. At the same time, Hayabu was doing some tests on himself inside the hospital, and when he saw the results, he was not happy at all. In the amusement park, the circus show that Yujiri was watching ended, and all the audience members stood up. Yujiri started looking for Andy to leave, but suddenly she heard a child crying, so she went to see what was wrong. He told her that he was lost from his family. Yujiri said, don't worry, I'll help you find them, and she took his hand, closed her eyes, and listened carefully to the sounds in the area until she found his family looking for him. She took him to them. When the child reached his family, he told them, this girl helped me a lot. She closed her eyes and was able to hear your voices. The father was shocked when he heard this and said, could she be an Esper? They quickly left, and Yujiri was left standing alone. The people around started whispering that she might be an Esper and called security to take her out. The security guards came to take her, but suddenly she used her ability and created an illusion over the entire area. News of the incident quickly reached Minamoto and Andy, and they rushed to save the situation. Andy twisted his charm and ran toward Yujiri quickly, stopping her ability and telling her, don't worry, you didn't do anything wrong. Suddenly, the rest of the Pandra members arrived, saying, we sensed Yujiri's energy and came here right away, and they took her and left the area. They all returned to the ship. Momiji was comforting Yujiri, saying, don't worry, I know today was hard on you, but the whole family is here. Now go help them with the celebration. After she left, Andy asked Momiji, what does family mean? You all use that word a lot. Momiji responded, when I was a child, my city was in a civil war and there was no one left alive from my village. Just before the soldiers were going to shoot me, I found Magi standing in front of me, protecting me. I looked beside me and saw Hayabu coming in, saying, I know you've suffered a lot because you're an Esper, and if you want to take revenge on them, I'm here to help. And if you want to live in peace, I'm here too. From that moment, we've all been together. Everyone on this ship is in the same situation as me. Hayabu is trying to create a world where Espers can live in peace without fear, and we are all grateful to him. Suddenly, a girl came in with a cake. Andy asked, why is there a picture of Hayabu on it? She replied, because today is his birthday and we want to surprise him. Andy said, I didn't know and didn't get him any gift. Momiji said, it's okay, we'll forgive you this time, but next year, you have to remember. When Hayabu heard the word next year, he remembered the tests he had done at the hospital and thought to himself, I don't have much time left. I doubt there will be another birthday for me. By the end of the day, Andy went to submit his report to the commander, and he was shocked when the commander told him, your investigation is complete. Japan is now an ally of ours, and we will benefit from it. Now, you need to take control of the ship's system. As soon as you find the plan, contact us immediately, and we will handle the rest. Inside the ship, all the members had gathered to discuss their next plan, which was to steal the latest device that nullifies Esper abilities. Maggie told them, we need to steal it intact without destroying it because we need to study the latest technology humans have reached. At the same time, Andy was talking to himself, saying, if I complete the mission I came here for, everyone on the ship could get hurt. Suddenly, Hayabu said, by the way, as soon as we complete this mission, we will return to Japan because I saw the future again using my ability, and I know that the queen and those with her might be in danger at the hands of Babel. Then he turned to Andy and said, "Why are you so quiet today? It seems like something is bothering you." Andy responded, "No, nothing's wrong. I'm just tired." He went to get a drink and sat next to Memoji, saying, "I want to ask you something. Why does Babel hate us now?" She replied, "Because there's an old history between us." Andy said, "I heard a rumor that they had problems when they first started the organization, and I learned that Hayabu was connected to them." She said, "I can't tell you anything, but you can ask Hayabu himself." While they were talking, Yujiri approached them, saying, "I can't sleep, and I want someone to come read me a story." She chose Andy, and he went with her to read the story until she fell asleep. He got up to leave the room, but the hamster said to him, "Wait, before you go, return this book to the library." Andy went there to return the book and started browsing some books. Suddenly, an old photo fell out, and when he picked it up, he saw it was a picture of a group of soldiers wearing the Babel emblem, with a young Hayabu among them. Before he could understand anything, he heard someone coming, so he hid to avoid being seen. He saw Hayabu approach a book, open it, and a ghost of an old soldier appeared, saying, "It's been a long time, Itsumi." Itsumi responded, "Where am I now?" Looking at the book in Hayabu's hand, he saw it stained with blood and said, "It seems clear that I died before, but where is the rest of the team now?" Hayabu replied, "I need a favor from you." He handed Itsumi a paper with a picture of the ship on it. Itsumi analyzed it and said, "This ship uses the mind of Commander Hadashiko, who died in the war because he possessed extraordinary abilities. His mind is what gives the ship its power to disappear and move." Hayabu responded, "We've been on the run for a long time thanks to the power of his brain. I brought you here to ask you something. If something happens to me in the coming period, I want you to take command of the ship." He looked up at the ceiling and thought to himself, "This entire ship is protected by people who have already died." Then he raised his hair, revealing the bullet in his head, saying, "I'm not ready to leave life yet, but I will do everything in my power to destroy all the enemies of Esper's." Suddenly, Itsumi sensed someone in the library and tried to attack, but there was no one there. Hayabu went to check and found Andy's chain on the floor. The next day, Hayabu gave the chain back to Andy and said, "Didn't I tell you before to always keep this on?" Andy replied, "I forgot where I dropped it." He then asked, "I want to ask you something. I heard from Memoji that you want to create a world where Espers can live in peace. Do you believe that killing normals is the solution?" Hayabu answered, "And if that's the reality, which side will you choose?" Then he turned and walked away. Later that day, Andy began preparing his gun, his hand shaking heavily. He recalled the time he joined the American Army and was training in using firearms. He opened communication with his commander and said, "Tomorrow, I'll carry out the operation at the ship's core. Have all the soldiers ready." The commander asked, "What about Hayabu and the others?" Andy replied, "I'll leak information about them to Babel and they'll keep them occupied during that time. But we can't reveal the queen or those with her, so keep it all secret so none of them show up." The information started reaching Babel, and it included Pandra's plan and instructions not to send the queen and her followers. Minamoto told Sakaki, "I don't feel confident about this plan, but this is our last chance to prevent the prophecy from happening. If it does, humanity will be wiped out. Stopping Hayabu and Pandra is now our responsibility." Suddenly, they saw Queen Kaoru behind them, saying, "I heard everything, and I have to go with you." Minamoto responded, "No, and that's a final order." The next day, the organization's members started their mission and went to a city to stop the cargo there. After they stopped the truck, planes suddenly appeared overhead, equipped with anti-Esper weapons, and they saw Minamoto pointing a gun at them from the truck. Soldiers poured out of the vehicles. Hayabu said, "It seems like you knew our plan well." He turned to Maggie and said, "I'll leave this to you. I'm heading back to the ship now." Meanwhile, Andy was escaping the scene and met with Sakaki, who gave him a motorcycle to flee on. Hayabu tried to return to the ship but found Queen Kaoru standing in his way, saying, "I won't let you go back there. You're an Esper, and you know very well what will happen in the future. If you continue with this plan, the ship will sink, and everyone on board will die, including you. We're trying to protect you and all of Pandra." Hayabu replied, "It seems you've forgotten who you're talking to. All my friends are on that ship. I won't let them die and leave." He tried to use his ability, but he felt a pain in his heart, and Kaoru struck him with her power. He managed to regain control, turned his badge, and activated his ability, fighting her with all his strength until she fainted. He took her and placed her on a building's rooftop, turned his badge again, and deactivated his ability. He then felt intense pain, thinking to himself, "I hope I can live a little longer." At the same time, Andy reached the ship, activated his ability, and ran to the ship's main control room. There, he found the ship's core, which was the brain of Commander Hadashiko. He opened communication with his commander, informing him of what he had found, and said, send the soldiers immediately. Babel won't be able to delay them for long, and all the people on board are just children now. Tell the soldiers not to hurt any of them. Andy approached the device to inspect it, but suddenly, he heard Hayabu's voice behind him, saying, "Now I know your answer to my question, Secret Agent Andy. This is the core of the ship's power, and I won't let anyone destroy it." Andy asked, "You knew my identity?" Hayabu replied, "Yes, I've known for a while. Your combat techniques are all those of the American Army, but I don't need to tell you anything more because you're about to die, just like I did once before." Hayabu started to remember his past, when there was a war between the countries, and he decided to move to Japan because it was safe there, and also because it was his father's homeland. As soon as he arrived, he was greeted by one of his father's friends and his daughter, named Fujiko. Fujiko was very happy to see Hayabu and treated him like her younger brother. She was also an Esper. Hayabu lived with them, and one day, he was writing a letter to his late father telling him about his new life. Suddenly, Fujiko entered and took the letter to read it, but Hayabu used his power and managed to take the letter back, shocking Fujiko, who thought to herself, "I couldn't stop his power, which means he's much stronger than me." Suddenly, two men from the military, Sawatomi and Itsumi, entered. Sawatomi told them, "I wanted to use your powers with us to help the world by having you join the army." He turned to Hayabu and said, "What do you think about joining us? You'll be able to help people on a larger scale and develop your powers to higher levels. We're forming a new team in the army made entirely of Espers." Fujiko responded, "No. The army wants to use the power of the Espers to start a war and steal from other countries again. Neither I nor Hayabu will be tools in your hands." Sawatomi replied, "I'm not waiting for a decision right now. Take your time to think about it, and rest assured that we won't use this team for dangerous battles. We're trying to prove to the military that we'll be very beneficial to them, creating a new world where Espers can live with humans." Fujiko, upset, took Hayabu and left the place. The letter Hayabu had been writing to his father fell to the ground, and Itsumi picked it up, took the information in it, and handed it back to Hayabu. He told Sawatomi, "I don't think Hayabu will join us, because the letter he was writing was to his late father, and it's clear that his father was very worried about him using his powers. He was trying to keep the matter as secret as possible." Sawatomi responded, "I know their power isn't their choice, but with it, we can change the entire world." According to the records, Hayabu and Fujiko are among the strongest Espers in the world, and I'm confident they will join us. Later that day, Hayabu was lying in his bed, thinking about what Sawatomi said earlier, and thought, "I could use my power to help people, but my father told me to abandon it. But if people would recognize me as a soldier and a citizen, then I would surely agree." At the same time, Fujiko was thinking the same thing. The next morning, they both woke up, got dressed, and decided to go with Sawatomi. All the Espers gathered to form the new unit in the military, and among them were Hayabu and Fujiko. Sawatomi welcomed them to the place. Days passed, and the unit was officially formed. They began their special training, and soon, it became well known that there were superpowered heroes in the military. A movie was even made about their powers, but it portrayed them in a way that mocked them, and Fujiko was very upset about it. She looked around but didn't see Hayabu. Itsumi told her, "He's gone on a personal errand." At that time, Hayabu was at a watch shop, picking up his father's broken watch after the shop owner had managed to fix it. He took it and left to look for Fujiko but suddenly ran into a police officer, who told him, "The clothes you're wearing are terrible for a Japanese boy. You need to learn how to dress properly." Hayabu started getting scolded. Suddenly, Fujiko appeared, arguing with the officer, telling him, "It's none of your business how children dress in the street." People gathered around, and Fujiko hit the officer, knocking him to the ground. The incident reached the army's leadership, and they issued a punishment for the entire team, putting them under house arrest. It was clear that the military was very upset with the Esper team because they weren't following the military's rules. Everyone noticed that Fujiko was upset about what she had done, so one of them told her, "Don't worry, none of us are here because we wanted to join the military, but because we want to be recognized as citizens. We don't like them, and they don't like us either. Don't worry, Sawatomi is trying to resolve the issues between us now." At the same time, Sawatomi was standing in front of the senior military leaders, hearing nothing but mockery from them about the Esper team, calling them a group of failures. Sawatomi responded, "Let me explain something to you. If the Espers were subjected to military rules and training, it would be a waste of time and talent. You're all underestimating their power. A fully trained team of your soldiers could stand against one Esper, but all the Espers together could destroy an entire army. Change is always necessary, especially during wars. The whole world has realized the power of Espers, and they've started using them for their military advantage. If we, as the Japanese, don't do the same, we won't be able to stand against any external force." However, the faces of the leaders were still filled with objection. Sawatomi continued, "We may have problems as soldiers under your command, but I request that our military strength be recognized. We are willing to be tested. Choose your most powerful weapon against one of us. If we lose, we will disband the team. According to my information, the Navy has recently requested a new generation of fighter jets, and they are currently being tested. We can assist you in that test. If we lose, you'll be rid of us, but if we win, we will be officially recognized as the strongest team within the Japanese army. Sawatomi returned and gathered the entire team to inform them of the plan, saying, "We must win this battle because it will determine the future of Espers in this country. The battle will be aerial, one of us against one of them, and we will use guns with fake bullets." Fujiko stood up and said, "Let me handle the mission since I was the one who made the mistake. I need to take responsibility." Sawatomi replied, "No, Hayabu will be the one to carry out the mission." Hayabu's special training began that same day as he attempted to simulate a plane attack. The training lasted for several days until the day of the duel finally arrived. The Marine soldier began flying the plane towards the location, and when he looked beside him, he found Fujiko saying, "You should be more aware because we've been flying next to you for a while and you didn't notice." Another one said, "You need to pay close attention because if this were a real battle, you'd be dead by now." The soldier ignored them and flew towards Hayabu, irritated, thinking, "How can they fly without a plane? I have to destroy them today and end them for good." He flew towards Hayabu, and the duel began. Hayabu started moving erratically in the air, trying to distract him, but the soldier was right behind him with all his might, testing the plane's full potential. Hayabu's movements were slower in comparison, and he remembered during training when one of the soldiers told him, "The plane will fly at 500 kilometers per hour, so you need to be very careful. Our advantage is maneuverability, not speed. You need to be able to turn easily while flying. That's where you'll excel. When he flies after you, you need to dodge, and when he turns the plane to catch you, that's when you turn your body and shoot him in the head. At that moment, you'll win the battle." Hayabu replied, "But the machine gun is very heavy. I prefer to use a regular rifle because every fighter has a well-known weak point, and it's right above the forehead. If I can aim one bullet at it, the whole fight will be over." Hayabu tried to execute this plan by dodging the plane's attack, but suddenly, he felt his body become heavy and a large force pulled at his legs, halting his movement. Sawatomi and the other soldiers stood on a ship watching the battle unfold, and one of them said, "At the end of the day, Hayabu is just a child. He can't unleash his full power because of the immense pressure." Sawatomi reassured them, "There's no need to worry. I know the fate of our unit depends on this duel, but I anticipated something like this. I've invested my entire future in this unit, and I didn't choose Hayabu randomly. Just keep watching him. The more pressure he faces, the stronger his power will become." Hayabu felt a force binding his entire body and remembered his father's words, never to use his power, and that if he obeyed the military, he would become nothing more than a tool in their hands, just like what happened to his mother. He recalled his father hitting him, saying, "Your mother died because she tried to help humans using her power. The army kept conducting experiments on her, and I helped them, believing I could benefit humanity. I chose to help people over the girl I loved. I won't let you make the same mistake. You can't use your power. If you want to live among people as a human, forget about the power you have." The force around Hayabu began to weaken, and he thought to himself, "No, I was born in Esper, and this is my reality. I won't try to live a life that isn't mine. I must be myself." He remembered Sawatomi's words to him on the ship before the battle, "You were born in Esper, and that's an advantage. You have to use it. There's nothing to fear, so forget your father's words. This is your home now. As long as the Esper unit exists in the military, you can be yourself. If you can't unleash your power in the fight, then you'll have the freedom to choose how you want to live your life." The energy around Hayabu disappeared, his speed increased dramatically, and he began to outmaneuver the plane. During the fight, his father's watch fell into the sea, and Hayabu thought, "I need to buy myself time to land the killing shot." He stood still in front of the plane, and as it turned, he fired one shot, winning the duel. Before the team could celebrate the victory, someone rushed in and told Sawatomi that there was urgent news. An unidentified submarine had been spotted in the surrounding waters. Sawatomi ordered Hayabu to head there immediately. The entire team flew to intercept them and found the submarine firing at them. They then dived into the water. The team reported to Sawatomi, explaining that it was likely an American submarine. Suddenly, Hayabu noticed 3 dolphins swimming nearby, each marked with numbers. It became clear that they were Espers. The dolphins used their powers to send a message to Hayabu, saying they were there to help. But suddenly, a missile was launched from the submarine, killing one of the dolphins. 2 more missiles were fired at the remaining dolphins. One of Hayabu's team members tried to destroy them and managed to stop one, but the other missile headed toward the dolphins. Hayabu sprinted to intercept it, with the soldier in the plane helping him move faster than the missile. He dove into the water, stood in front of the missile, and used his power to stop it, successfully saving the dolphins. The submarine retreated, and Hayabu and his team returned to Sawatomi, overjoyed with their success. Hayabu felt immense gratitude for having Sawatomi in his life and decided to follow his path for the rest of his life. Forgetting his father's words, he resolved to live true to himself with his friends. One of them took the dolphins to the city, and one of the dolphins said to him, "Be careful. We are fine for now, but you are the ones close to death." Indeed, within less than a day, everything in Japan had changed. An atomic bomb had been dropped on Hiroshima. Hayabu rushed to speak to Commander Sawatomi, telling him, "This is a new type of bomb. We need to act fast." Sawatomi responded, "No, you've done your part, but for us, the war is over. Unconditional surrender is the only option we have now. Japan has no military strength left, and every member of the Esper unit has been injured except you." Hayabu said, "I can still fight alone, at least to stop the second bomb." Sawatomi replied, "No, our fate has already been decided. We have to lose and rebuild ourselves. Look here." He showed Hayabu a device he had made that contained the mind of the dead dolphin, which he could analyze and use its special powers. "I used their power to see part of the future. After the war ends, the number of Espers will increase dramatically, and you will lead them and destroy the world." Sawatomi raised his gun to Hayabu's face and said, "I'm very grateful to you, but I won't let the occupying army know you exist. Your power is unmatched anywhere in the world. I tried to turn you into a monster, but I can't allow anyone else to control this power." He fired 2 bullets at Hayabu, who collapsed, bleeding. As he lay there, Sawatomi said, "I won't let you become an enemy of humanity. After all, I'm a human, not an Esper. The power you possess is mine alone." Hayabu started to cry, remembering his friends who had died. When he looked up, he saw Sawatomi standing over him with the gun aimed at his head, and Sawatomi fired one last shot at him. Hayabu collapsed, drenched in his own blood, but suddenly stood up again. Before Sawatomi could fire again, Hayabu used his power to kill him. He asked himself, "Am I truly a monster?" He left the place and swore never to forgive any human. At that moment, in the present time again, the US military forces had started surrounding the area, and Hayabu began attacking Andy. Andy couldn't stop his attack, so Hayabu said to him, "You must be surprised that you can't stop my power. You can stop any power, but you can't stop active motion. In other words, if I throw something at you and release it before it reaches you, you won't be able to stop it." He struck Andy, knocking him to the ground. However, Andy got back up and pointed a gun at him. Hayabu asked, "Why didn't you shoot?" Andy replied, "My mission is to take this device and retrieve it safely. I don't need to kill you." Hayabu responded, "I thought you were like a dog, but it turns out you're someone else's dog." Andy told him to say what he liked and threw the gun at him before running toward the device and using his power to deactivate it. The ship's engines stopped, and it reappeared in the sea. The US military located the ship's position and began their operation, with many drones spreading throughout the area. They hacked into the ship's system and started speaking through its speakers, warning everyone on board to withdraw and surrender immediately. Upon hearing the voice, Hayabu was shocked, recognizing it. Suddenly, the drones launched a direct attack on the ship, and Hayabu became enraged at the person he had heard, walking away from the scene immediately. Andy, puzzled by the direct assault on the ship, said to himself, "How are they attacking the ship directly? I told them everyone here is just children." Hayabu stood in front of the drones, blocking all of them, saying, "Who is controlling them? I need to find out who it is." Meanwhile, soldiers landed on the ship and stormed the rooms where the children were, but they were met by a woman who killed them, telling the children to hide under the ship. The soldiers stood before her, using devices that neutralized Esper powers, and managed to suppress her abilities. All the ship's members gathered in one place, hiding and unable to use their powers. Suddenly, they noticed someone holding a gun, destroying the drone above them. They regained their powers and went out to fight the soldiers. Minamoto stood in front of Magi and told him, "Wait, now isn't the time for fighting." He showed him a video on his phone of the US forces attacking the ship. Minamoto explained, "Babel predicted this would happen, which is why we wanted to imprison you first. But now, we need to save the ship." Magi turned his head and headed towards the ship. Minamoto asked him, "I just need you to promise me one thing, protect Hayabu." They all rushed to the ship as fast as they could. Meanwhile, US forces reached Andy's room, and Andy called his commander, saying, "How is this happening? I told you everyone on the ship is just children, and now you're trying to kill them." But there was no response. The soldiers successfully took the device and began transporting it. Magi and his team arrived on the ship, killed the soldiers in front of them, and rushed to check on the children. At the same time, Yujiri left her room and hid under a staircase to avoid the soldiers, but Andy's commander found her hiding spot and alerted the troops. He decided to take her hostage. Under the ship, Magi and his group reached the children and decided to try and evacuate them. Magi and Momiji went to search for the others. Above, one of the soldiers captured Yujiri and placed a seal on her neck. The troops surrounded her with an anti-Esper device until she lost consciousness. In the command room, Andy walked with the soldiers, and suddenly, a hamster appeared, saying, "You're a traitor," with them. Just as Andy was about to strike it, one of the soldiers shot it first. Andy went along with them to transport the device and found his commander standing before him. The commander told him, "You've completed your mission," and Andy looked behind him, shocked to see Yujiri held hostage. He asked, "What does this mean? You told me you'd leave the children alone." The commander replied, "I'll respect her human rights, to the extent of our ability. In the end, any Esper not under our supervision could lose control and destroy the world. If we want to achieve peace for humanity, we must take strict measures." Andy punched the soldier next to him, grabbed his machine gun, and said to the commander, "Let Yujiri go now. That girl isn't a monster. I've been watching her this whole time. Espers are actually humans." The commander said, "From your words, it's clear that you've betrayed us," raising his gun at him. He told the soldiers, "I'll erase all your records with us as an investigator, and you'll share the same fate as the other members," then fired a shot, knocking Andy to the ground. The commander and his soldiers took Yujiri and left. At the same time, Hayabu had destroyed all the drones around him. He looked at the ship, which was burning with children still on board, and tried to reach them, but he felt intense pain in his chest. He then saw Magi standing in front of the soldier, saving the children. Hayabu stood before them, struggling to catch his breath as the ship collapsed in front of him. Magi grabbed him by the shirt and said, "You must hold on. You're our leader. If you don't protect the ship, then who will?" Hayabu smiled once again and told him, "I'm leaving everything here to you. You're responsible for them. I have another mission to complete." Hayabu flew towards the submarine, launching the missiles, turned his emblem, unleashed his power, and attacked it and the remaining drones. He thought to himself, "If the person behind this operation is truly you, I won't let you kill any more of my friends like you did before. I'll destroy all of humanity. I must show them our power." He created a massive explosion on the submarine and destroyed everything in front of him. Meanwhile, all the ship's members managed to escape, leaving only Andy behind. He suddenly stood up after being shot and realized the bullet had hit Hayabu's necklace, saving his life. He looked up and saw Hayabu fighting in the sky, blocking all the incoming missiles. However, Hayabu's strength was drained, and he began to fall. Andy quickly ran after him, jumping into the water as the entire ship was destroyed. Hayabu began to remember his memories with his father and the things he used to tell him. Suddenly, he found Andy saving him from drowning, with Fujiko trying to rescue him as well. Days later, Minamoto was sitting with the ministers in Japan, and they received a message from the United States asking them to cover up all the events that had occurred and not to release any news to the media. Minamoto told them, "I have a message from the director of the Babel organization," and played a recording of her saying, "Hello, everyone. I will try to save what's left of your reputation in front of the world, but in return, you will never interfere with Babel's affairs. Otherwise, we will expose all your secrets, like the things you did after World War II. Minamoto then stood up and left them there. At the same time, Fujiko and Sakaki were checking on Hayabu's condition. Fujiko told him, "We need to investigate what the United States did because they were acting very strangely, but at the same time, we need to regain our strength. That's why we brought Hayabu here, to the former mansion of Baron Tsubomi, my father and his father's friend, the place where he grew up as a child." As time passed, Hayabu awoke from his coma and said to Fujiko, "I don't remember asking for your help." She replied, "I'm not the one who helped you. If you want to thank someone, thank Andy," and threw him Andy's pendant. Hayabu asked, "Where is he now? I want to talk to him." She replied, "He's not here, but I want to know all the information from you. Why did the United States act so violently?" Hayabu remembered the voice on the ship and thought to himself, "Could it be the same person who killed me before? Commander Sawatomi?" Fujiko interrupted his thoughts, asking, "Why aren't you listening to me?" Hayabu responded, "You don't need to know everything. We're not siblings like before. I have nothing to tell you." Meanwhile, Andy was in the Babel organization's hospital undergoing tests to ensure his safety. One of the Queen's followers found a mark from the United States on him to track his location, so she used her power to erase it from his mind, destroying it. Andy could no longer communicate with them. He got up from the bed and asked, "Where is Hayabu now? I want to talk to him." The doctor there replied, "I can't tell you, for your safety. Hayabu won't forgive you for your betrayal that easily." One of the Queen's followers used her weapon to restrain the doctor and used her power to locate Hayabu, making the doctor faint. They decided to go to Hayabu, and Andy said, "I'll go with you." Kaoru asked, "What's your plan now? You barely escaped with your life." Andy replied, I don't know, but I won't leave Hayabu alone, and they decided to take him with them. They all got in the car to go to the mansion where Hayabu was. On the way, they stopped to rest for a while. Andy sat with Kaoru and asked, "Why do you serve Hayabu?" She replied, "The first time we met him, we were children, and he was very kind to us. But that's because we're Espers. Even though there are many humans you can trust, he didn't trust anyone else." Andy then asked, "What's the deal with you becoming the queen in the future and leading an Esper rebellion against humans?" She replied, "I don't know anything about that, but Hayabu always says that even though I don't want to do it. I don't want Hayabu and Minamoto to fight each other, so I have to stop it. I still don't understand why humans and Espers can't live together in peace." Meanwhile, the members of the Pandra team were all gathered together, and Maggie entered, saying, "I have a USB with some information about what happened." When they played its contents, they found that the American military had taken Yujiri with them. Maggie told them this is the airbase in the United States. They couldn't determine where she went next. Momiji said, "It's good that she's still safe, but what do they want from her? She's just a child." The hamster said, "As I told you, the reason for all this is Andy, he's an American spy." Maggie reassured them, "Don't worry, we will rescue Yujiri as soon as possible, and no one should worry about Hayabu, he is definitely still alive." In Hayabu's room, Sakaki was monitoring his health, and suddenly, the three girls entered with Andy. They heard Hayabu say, "I am very happy you came, Your Majesty, but there is someone I want to talk to first." Andy stepped forward, and Hayabu asked him, "Regarding the call on the ship, did you meet the owner of that voice?" Andy replied, "Yes, only once. When the American military decided to recruit me, we were sitting in a cafe, my commander and I, along with him. He was the head of the organization against Espers. He told me he wanted to use Esper powers to help the world and that my power would be very important to them because they couldn't accurately determine it at first. That's because I don't belong to any side. I'm not a full Esper, nor a full human. He offered me to join so I could be myself." Suddenly, Hayabu grabbed him by his clothes and threw him against the wall, demanding, "What is his name? Answer me quickly." Andy replied, "I don't know, he didn't tell me his name. But I found out he's Japanese and participated in the last World War." Fujiko was shocked and said, "It's impossible that man is still alive." Hayabu got very angry, and a large amount of energy began to emanate from him until he fainted. At the same time, Minamoto arrived outside the mansion and went to Sakaki to check on Hayabu. Sakaki told them, "Unfortunately, it looks like Hayabu is going to die soon. I think the symptoms have been showing for a while. There's only one way to save him, but the results are not guaranteed." Meanwhile, Andy was listening to Hayabu's story from Fujiko and learned that Sawatomi was the person who shot him in the past and that he died before but came back to life because of his power to seek revenge on the naturals. She told him Hayabu was betrayed by the people he trusted most in his life, and the same thing happened to her. After they lost the war, all the members of their team were killed one by one. Luckily, she managed to escape and founded the Babel organization. The members of Babel whom Hayabu killed in the past were all linked to the old army team. Andy asked, "Does that mean you joined the army that betrayed your friends in the past?" Fujiko replied, "It doesn't matter what you say, Babel wouldn't have existed without what I did. I left the past behind to think about the future. The memories of my friends, Hayabu's revenge, and my past life are all history to me now." Hayabu woke up from the noise beside him and saw Kaoru sleeping on the bed next to him, connected by medical devices. Sakaki told Hayabu, "Don't worry, Kaoru volunteered to help you live longer." Hayabu looked at her and she said, "I know you hate naturals, but if we work together, we can move forward to a better future." Hayabu replied, "Someone told me that a long time ago, but the end is always the same." At the end of the day, while everyone was asleep, Hayabu got up and started putting on his outfit. Meanwhile, Andy was walking in the forest, thinking about how all this happened. The person who made him work as an American investigator was the same person who killed Hayabu before. Suddenly, he heard an alarm, and everyone in the mansion woke up to search for Hayabu. Kaoru found him and said, "I appreciate your feelings, but I have to go to save my friends and meet that person again. If I don't go now, I won't be able to live my life again." Kaoru asked, "What will happen to everyone in Pandra? And not just them, but what about us? You're not alone, we can all help you, and surely we can do something together." Hayabu replied, "I'm glad you always look to the future," then turned and walked away. She screamed, "Is revenge so important to you that you'll sacrifice your future?" She fell to the ground and started crying. Andy, who was watching, heard Minamoto say, "Go now, stay with him, and help him with everything you can." Andy got in the car and went to catch up with Hayabu. He stood in front of him and said, "Get in with me. I'm also upset with the American military for betraying me, and I also need to save Yujiri." Hayabu gave him his pendant and got in the car with him, saying, "Let's see what happens there." At the same time in America, Andy's commander was driving his car on the way home. On the way, He was listening to the news announcing that the winner of the New York elections was a person supporting Esper rights. As soon as the commander reached home, he opened the door to find Hayabu waiting for him, with Andy holding a gun to his head from behind. The commander said, "It looks like you both came back from the dead." Andy demanded, "I want to know where Yujiri is right now." The commander replied, "It's clear you've changed your allegiance, but the truth is you will never be complete." He turned and struck Andy, taking the gun from him and pointing it at his own head to commit suicide, but Hayabu managed to stop the bullet, saying, "I won't let you die so easily. There are still many questions I need answered." Andy took the gun from him and held it behind his back again. The commander sighed, "It's clear I have no second chance. I'll take you to the person you want." At the same time, Minamoto was with Fujiko, informing her about the information he had uncovered. The person behind the American attack decision on the ship was someone from Japan who moved to the United States after the last war. Fujiko said, "Now there's no doubt, that person is Sawatomi." On the other side, Andy and Hayabu were walking with the commander entering the State Department building. The commander said, "You might be wondering why we are here, but you should know we are not the only ones working on this plan. There are more people with a common goal, ultimately, for humans to harness Esper power." Andy asked, "Then why do you mark the Espers you detain?" The commander replied, "It's a biochip. We use it to tame their power if they have any outbursts. This is exactly like your Esper friend, Yujiri. She was an experimental product of a certain organization, but due to negligence in lab supervision, she managed to escape. She is simply a monster among many other monsters we were able to create." They all entered another room, and the commander said, "Yujiri was here a few days ago, but I don't know where she is now." Hayabu approached a chair and extracted the information from it, confirming she was indeed there. Suddenly, they heard a voice, saying, "I've been waiting for you here for a long time. It seems some things have changed, but for me, everything is the same as always." Hayabu exclaimed, "I was sure I killed you back then. How did you manage to live again?" The voice responded, "I clung to the power of life." Hayabu asked, "And what's your goal in collaborating with the United States?" The voice replied, "I'll give you a hint," and displayed an image of the future, saying, "I managed to capture this image using Hachigo's mind power that I took from your ship." He started showing more images, saying, "This is the future, a future of complete destruction. To protect human history, we need to change the future now." Among the images was one of Queen Keiru. He said, "She is the one who will protect the future and destroy all of humanity's future." Hayabu got angry, saying, "I won't let you do anything," but the voice replied, "We are going to start work soon anyway. What do you say? Show me the true power of an Esper." Suddenly, the glass in the place shattered, and planes started attacking them. The commander attempted to commit suicide and take Hayabu with him, but Andy quickly shot at the Esper power suppressor, allowing Hayabu to use his power to protect himself. The commander fell dead before them. Both of them ran and started trying to escape from the planes until they reached a place with destroyed military weapons. They found soldiers standing and attacking them as well. Hayabu threw 2 rods to Andy to use, and he struck the planes with them, trying to help Hayabu as they climbed up the building. Andy used his power to stop the soldiers' bullets until they could reach the elevator. But suddenly, the elevator stopped before they reached the top floor. Hayabu took a piece of metal from the door and turned it into a sword using his power. He stepped out in front of numerous planes, blocking their attacks. Andy ran quickly towards them, managing to get ahead, killing a soldier standing there, taking his weapon, and starting to shoot at the remaining planes. They moved until they reached a large courtyard. Andy shot at the Esper power suppressors in the area. Suddenly, small shells started falling from the ceiling, and Hayabu said, "These shells will slow down our movement, and we won't be able to escape easily." Many planes entered, and Andy started shooting at them with his weapon while Hayabu tried to destroy the rest with his sword. Numerous soldiers stormed the place, surrounding Andy and Hayabu from all sides. Hayabu's power began to weaken, and just as he was about to use his full power by turning his badge, Andy said, "No, you'll waste your power here. Save it for the main fight. Try to escape now, and I'll deal with them. I'm very sorry because it's my fault we're in this situation. I should have told you the truth from the start." Hayabu said, "You don't need to apologize. In truth, I wasn't always right either. But I won't leave. I'll stay and fight them with you." The number of soldiers increased, and suddenly, the glass in the place shattered again, and members of the Pandra organization entered, fighting all the soldiers. Magi approached Hayabu, saying, "I'm sorry I'm late," and they killed everyone there, taking them and escaping. They all stood on another ship, and Fujura said to Andy, "What are you doing here? Didn't you already betray us?" Andy replied, "I want to save Yujiri," and Fujura punched him in the face, saying, "Now we're even. We need to think about how to save Yujiri now." All the members of the ship watched the conference of the New York governor, who was trying to convince people to cooperate with the Espers and leave all conflicts behind to ensure a better future for everyone. Hayabu remembered the images he had seen before and told them, head to New York State immediately at full speed. At that moment in New York, everyone was cheering for the new candidate, gathering in the streets. On the roof of one of the buildings, Yujiri was standing with Fujiko behind her. Suddenly, Yujiri turned and used her power on her, managing to control her mind and trap her in an illusion, seeing a copy of herself. The same thing happened with Magi and Momiji. Yujiri began walking through the city until she met Andy on the road. On top of one of the buildings, Hayabu was standing and holding Yujiri's charm, which he took from her on her birthday. In a dark room, Satomu was observing everything that was happening, saying to himself that Hayabu was still hiding until now. He instructed one of his followers to keep a close watch on the area because Hayabu could appear at any moment. He then said that President Green had been elected and that, according to his vision of the future, this would bring temporary peace between humans and Espers. But today, if the president was assassinated by an Esper, the future would be rewritten. Riots would increase in the country, trust between humans and Espers would diminish, and an organization would be established to regulate their freedom, preventing Espers from rebelling. This way, the future could be protected, and Queen Kaoru would be completely erased from the future. Andy started running after Yujiri to catch up with her and found that she had dropped her charm on the ground. He picked it up and ran up the building after her, but security guards caught him. Suddenly, Minamoto and Sakaki arrived, knocked out the guards, and Andy quickly ran to the main government building where Yujiri was standing on top. As soon as the president stepped onto the stage, Yujiri's power exploded in the area, and she began to attack the president. Andy managed to block her attack, and the president escaped from there. Police forces arrived to shoot at Andy, but Minamoto and Sakaki stood in their way, blocking them. Everyone started to flee, but before they could get far, Yujiri's power exploded again, trapping everyone in her illusion. All the people began chanting for the death of Espers, orchestrated by Satomu, who was closely monitoring the events and said that he was close to achieving his plan. Without a power like Yujiri's, they wouldn't have been able to rewrite the future. He looked up and saw Hayabu standing in front of Yujiri, saying that nothing would change. Suddenly, Yujiri attacked Hayabu, but he managed to block the strike and said that it was clear she was under hypnosis, but her power would not affect him. He looked up to see a person who looked like him, and they began to fight, matching each other in strength. Suddenly, more hallucinations and old memories appeared, reminding him of the plane he attacked as a child, followed by memories of his old friends attacking him, and then his father's voice speaking to him. He told himself to stay calm, knowing it was all an illusion. He saw Satomu pointing a gun at his head and shooting him again, causing him to fall to the ground, bleeding. He got up to find his younger self holding a gun to kill him. Hayabu stood up, turned his emblem, and decided to use the last of his strength. All the hallucinations began to dissolve, and he saw Yujiri in front of him. She also started to remember her old memories, the time she escaped from the lab, moved to an orphanage, her lonely life, and the moment she met Hayabu for the first time. She took a step closer to him, her illusion lifting from the city, returning everyone to normal. Andy arrived on the rooftop, seeing Hayabu using all his power to help Yujiri. He then removed the emblem from her neck, waking her from her hypnotic state. Suddenly, Hayabu's power exploded, and he said he couldn't control his body anymore, having used too much power. The emblem on his clothes shattered, and he told Andy to take Yujiri and run away quickly. He said he tried to protect the future for them, and if this was his end, he had no regrets. Andy replied that he wouldn't listen this time, approaching him and saying he had hated Espers all his life. But on Hayabu's ship, he learned that they were just ordinary people and wouldn't let this be the end. He found Yujiri clinging to his clothes, trying to move with him. He gave her the charm she had dropped earlier, and they both tried their hardest to move forward. Andy said that his future had changed since meeting Hayabu in prison, and he was excited to see the future Hayabu would create. He placed his hand on Hayabu's shoulder, using his power to stop Hayabu's energy until he finally managed to stop it and collapsed, unconscious. The next day, Hayabu went to a park in the city and found Satomu sitting alone. Hayabu told him that all his assistants had been arrested, his organization dismantled completely, and he had nowhere to run. Satomu asked Hayabu to kill him, saying he didn't want to live any longer. Hayabu replied that he couldn't do that, as it might upset Queen Kaoru. Instead, he would kill his soul, erasing all his memories and leaving him to live as a dead person. Hayabu put his hand on Sayatomu's face, erasing all his memories, and left him in the park. At the same time, Andy was with the members of Pandra, bidding them farewell as he was leaving. He stood in the street, and Hayabu approached him, asking where he was going. Andy replied that he needed to find out who he really was, not an Esper nor human, but he was sure he would find a place where he belonged, setting off on his search. Hayabu gave him the organization's pendant back, saying Andy should keep it, and made him an honorary member of Pandra,